Thank you, Vishal, for the introduction, and I would like to welcome everybody who has joined us today to talk a little bit about turning around failing innovation programs. It's a topic that might seem difficult to handle. We will discuss some areas where challenges are sometimes common to innovation programs and how to really overcome them and how to turn them around. So let me just give you an overview of the webinar, of the topics we want to discuss. I would like to just give you a brief introduction to HYPE. Who are we? What do we do? What is the profile of our organization? And afterwards, I would like to talk a little bit about what failure really is all about. So I would like to give you a couple of examples of clients of ours, how failure has really materialized in innovation programs, but also on a level where you think about individual initiatives, individual innovation initiatives that you might run. Afterwards, we will look into the challenges themselves. So I would like to give you an overview of the most common challenges that we have seen working with over 200 organizations over the last years, and would like to simply mention recommendations from our side, how to overcome them or how to even prepare well enough so that you are not even facing those challenges. And last but not least, we will just summarize what we have seen during the course of the webinar and just summarize the content there. Very good. So let me just start by giving you a quick overview into HYPE. So who is HYPE Innovation? Our organization was founded actually in 2001 as a spin-off back then from Daimler. Our founders were working at Daimler and saw that there was potential for a solution like HYPE outside of Daimler. We are a German company, for those of you who are not aware of that. We are positioned in Bonn. Our headquarters is in Bonn. We are a specialist in terms of innovation management, so it's our only industry. It's the only industry we're working in. It's the only business that we are following on. And we have locations also outside of Bonn. So we have offices in Boston and Denver in the United States. We have an additional office in Berlin, in Germany. I myself, I'm located in the office here in Abu Dhabi. And we have an office also in London. If it comes to our products support basically the full life cycle of innovation management, we call it. So we start at collecting ideas, we go over to evaluating ideas, to implement ideas. And when we talk about idea implementation, we talk typically about two types of ideas. On the one side, you have those small ideas, those quick wins, ideas that you can implement very easily. But on the other side, you have ideas that might influence your business model, that have a strategic component to them. In some scenarios, you want to maybe combine ideas. And then you need a strong back end where you conceptualize certain topics, where you maybe group ideas together to create a strong business case. And then it's about really implementing larger projects, which have a longer timeline and huger budgets typically. All of this can be managed in our products. Our products come off the shelf basically with all the tools that you need, so you could just turn it on and just utilize the platform. But if there's a need to really customize the platform, our platform is flexible in terms of adaptation. So you can customize and design unique user interface for you if it comes to functionalities, processes, reporting, and so on. All of those areas of the platform can evolve with you and can be adapted to your needs. You can either install the software in a hosted environment, in a cloud environment, or you can install it internally on-premise in your organization, and you can buy or rent the application. So we ourselves, we don't really see, we wouldn't call ourselves really a traditional software provider, but more a solution provider. So the software is one component of it. It has proven to be easy to use. As I mentioned, it is flexible. Our processes are best practice processes, have been implemented in many organizations all over the world. We support our clients by implementation services. So if it's about really integrating the application into your IT environment and your infrastructure, but you also think about the value that you want to achieve. And this becomes a more and more important aspect nowadays. The technological part is one component of a successful innovation program, but really talking about people, talking about processes, this is equally important. So we support our organizations by really looking at the value and maximizing the value that you're looking for. Good, a little bit just about myself, just a small introduction. As my colleague Misha mentioned, I'm the Director of Professional Service in the Middle East. I've been working for over 7 years now in the industry in online innovation, but also in idea management programs. At the moment, I'm working primarily in the Middle East, so I'm supporting clients in the Middle East and North Africa in implementing successful innovation programs. I'm focusing there on really innovation consulting, so on the business aspects, on creating the value that our clients are looking for. But it's also about training and coaching the appropriate innovation teams in those organizations. Very good. I hope you got a small insight into our organization. And let's think about, well, who is this webinar really for? So who is really, who am I looking for as somebody who might be interested in this topic? So on the one side, the target would be here, everybody among you who is really challenged by a currently failing innovation program. So it's not just about getting the first indicators, getting the first signs of failure. It's really about if you are struggling to survive, basically, if you get indicators from your management that the program is really in danger. But it's also about the innovation managers that are really seeing first developments that go in the wrong direction. So if you see that the success levels are decreasing, if you see that participation goes down, if you see that the value that you create has gone down recently, then this is the right webinar for you. And if you are looking to launch a new innovation program, so if it is something that is on your agenda, if you are looking forward to do this in the next, let's say, 6 to 9 months, then this webinar could be interesting for you. Great, so let's look into failure. Let's try to understand what does it mean if something fails in the context of innovation management. What I would like to just highlight here are a couple of examples from our clients. On the one side, we actually had a very interesting scenario with one of our clients in Switzerland. The company name was Swisslog. They are in the logistics industry. And they had challenges basically on the program level. So it was a scenario where the program was challenged. What happened at Swisslog was that they run an innovation program. They launched it at a certain point in time, a couple of years ago, actually. They ran a couple of campaigns, and what they saw was that the audience that they targeted was actually enthusiastic. So people were participating, they received a certain amount of ideas, they got good comments, and generally collaboration was appreciated and was successful. But what happened at a certain point in time was that, well, following campaigns suddenly didn't achieve the same success as previously run campaigns. So there was a quick drop-off in terms of especially engagement, and this drop-off in the end led to the fact that those campaigns simply didn't create the successes that the campaign team was looking for. And what happened was basically that Swisslog approached us and said, well, we have difficulties to understand what is happening here. Please try to help us. You are the experts at Hype. So we sat together with them. We met them actually for a full-day workshop. We tried to understand what was the setup of the innovation program, what kind of estimations were made, especially in terms of the cultural environment. And what we did together with Swisslog is to define an action plan that was then implemented, and this actually turned around the innovation program. So this is one important message here, that even failing innovation programs, we can turn them around. We just have to understand really what happened in the past, what were the estimations, what was the environment in the past, and what has changed really. So what did we learn from Swisslog, and what, of course, Swisslog itself learned? On the one side, one of the estimations was that there would be an innovation culture from day one. So this was unfortunately an estimation that proved to not be correct. So this led to the fact that in the end those campaigns failed. Another aspect was that it was very difficult to really understand for Swisslog to really analyze why do we lose momentum here. So what has really happened? So it was difficult for Swisslog to really dig down into the data. So what were the key actions that we recommended? Just to give you an example here. On the one side, we focused and recommended a strong focus on communication. So this was something that was lacking in the innovation setup. So there was no communication in terms of the program. There was no real communication activities in terms of the campaigns. So we recommended a strong focus here. We created a communication plan together with Swisslog actually to create a certain belief into the approach. So if I as a user, if I don't see that the whole initiative is working, if I don't see that certain things are moving forward, I will not believe into the approach and I will leave the program actually. Second aspect or second recommendation that we highlighted was to implement local campaign sponsors. So as you saw, Swisslog ran a couple of campaigns, but one key element that was not properly aligned was they had actually selected innovation team members as sponsors. And this typically leads to the fact that that employees, that the target audiences of those campaigns, they don't feel connected to the campaigns. They simply don't trust the initiative itself, the campaign. They don't trust that there will really be activities after the submission of ideas and comments, that there will be no evaluation, no implementation especially. So there's no direct connection to the campaign sponsors. And those sponsors were simply also not known. It was the innovation team, it was a relatively new program, so nobody knew who the sponsors were. They didn't have a certain reputation. Actually, they didn't have any reputation at that moment. And last but not least, we recommended to focus on so-called targeted campaigns. So the campaigns that Swisslog actually launched in the early stages, they were very, very vague in their nature. So there were no real targets defined. There was just a very, very vague context given. So it was difficult for employees to understand, well, what is requested here? What is asked from me? And there was also a disconnect. So these were topics that were far away from the employees, from the target audiences. So we recommended to focus on targeted campaigns, to think about topics where employees feel a certain connection to. And this does not mean that more generic, more open campaigns cannot work, but they have their place in innovation programs. So they typically make sense when you have a strong collaborative community, when you have reached a certain maturity, then those open generic campaigns can be launched. So these were the key actions, and as you saw, we turned around Swisslog. I would like to give you another set of examples, not on a program level, but here on a campaign level. So how does it look like if campaigns really fail? So these are two examples, two campaigns from customers from Hype, and both of those campaigns failed actually. Both of those campaigns didn't achieve the successes that the campaign teams were looking for, and they failed for different reasons. So what you see here is this dark red line. This is a campaign where we had initial participation, so there was a certain momentum within this campaign running time, but at a certain point something happened here. And what happened was basically that the campaign team identified that there's a wrong understanding of the campaign among the audience. So the ideas that were submitted, the comments that were submitted, they all went into a direction that was not the direction that the campaign team was looking for. So there was a wrong understanding. It does not mean that people didn't submit ideas or didn't submit comments. They actually did that, but those ideas and comments were not of high value for the campaign team because they didn't make sense here. So the campaign description was simply not drafted well enough, not written in the right way. Now what happened after this understanding, after this was understood, actually the evaluation process started at some point. And this is something that you can do, and which in some scenarios makes sense to start the evaluation even while the campaign is running. And due to the fact that the ideas that were received and comments that were received actually didn't meet the expectations, the ideas were declined. And the more ideas were declined, you see that there's a sharp drop-off in participation. So the declining the ideas here in the end led to the result that people simply left the campaign, they didn't come back, and the campaign in all failed. The second example here, this orange line, is a campaign that basically never takes off. So you launch this campaign, you have certain expectations, but over the course of time you realize, well, for some reason we never get the participation levels that we were actually looking for. And in this specific case, what was happening was that the campaign description actually was totally unclear. So this is a little bit different than what we saw just a moment ago in this dark red campaign, where the campaign description was actually had information in it, but it was the wrong information. It was maybe not detailed enough. But here what we see is that it was too vague, basically. So This goes back partially also to the Swisslog example I mentioned. This was one aspect that is close to the Swisslog example. So an unclear campaign description will lead to the fact that people will never participate really. So people will not understand what is the campaign team looking for, what kind of ideas, what kind of collaboration. So not understanding the topic of the campaign will lead to this kind of impact, that people will simply never click on the button to submit an idea. They don't know what kind of ideas should I submit, and they don't know what kind of feedback should I give to existing ideas. So this was the main problem here in this example. And what I would like to do now is to simply take a high level overview here. So these were examples for failures on a program level and how we overturned this for Swisslog, and failures also on a campaign level. But going from those examples now to think about generally challenges that you might be facing today, or you want to prepare yourself to not face them in the future. So what are the most common challenges that Hype has seen among our clients? Well, let's take a look at the different areas of interest here. So on the one side, we talk about the technology. So we talk about software and the platform itself. Then we have the topic of the strategy. So the innovation strategy itself, what kind of challenges can you face there and how do you overcome them there? Then we talk about communication. So what plays a role if we talk about communication? What kind of challenges should you prevent? What kind of tactics should you use to overcome those challenges? And we talk about simply the execution part. So executing campaigns, really running those campaigns as good as possible. Let's look at the first one. Let's look at the technology sector here. So what kind of challenges have we seen occasionally? On the one side, we talk about access barriers here. So access barriers can have a negative impact because if I have challenges if it's difficult for me to participate, if it's difficult for me to access a platform, to access an initiative, if that's a cumbersome process, then I will probably not participate frequently or maybe even not participate at all. On the other side, we talk about specific channels. So here I would like to highlight mobile or terminal channels. These can lead to the fact that people don't participate at all because they don't maybe have the right channels accessible to them, so they cannot, even physically speaking, they cannot access the platform. So this becomes an issue for some companies. So let's look at the access barriers. What are we talking about? On the one side, we talk about tools and functionalities. So if you want to conduct a certain activity and you don't have the right tools and functionalities in your platform available to you, this will have a negative impact on you, on the participation levels. If the login procedure itself, if that is complicated, this will again have a negative impact on you. This will probably demotivate you and will make more or less sure that you don't log in another time. And then we talk about user interfaces also. So interfaces that are not intuitive enough, that are problematic to understand, that are challenging in terms of the structure, those can have a negative impact also on your audience. Now, if we talk about tools and functionalities, so how do we tackle that? What you can do is, prior to the launch of the platform, is to make a really clear assessment with different audiences here. On the one side, we recommend to involve stakeholders to understand what kind of functionalities, what kind of tools are they needing, basically. So what is the requirement from their side? Then you should talk also to evaluators before you launch a platform. So maybe they have a certain understanding of how they want to conduct an evaluation. Maybe they have a certain understanding in terms of evaluation processes, what they would like to use. So involve them into those discussions and talk to end users. For end users, it becomes more about the so-called front end of the platform. So here we talk maybe about aspects of collaboration, for example. If you look at your workforce, especially the younger demographic, if you look at the Generation Y, they might expect certain functionalities in the platform. These audiences are used to collaborate in their private environment, they are used to share information, and they expect those kinds of features and functionalities in the platform. So make sure that you talk to them about tools and functionalities here. If your platform and your program is already running, try to identify the gaps. So we recommend to talk to people that are actually leaving the platform. Look at those audiences that have participated in the past, that have logged in the past, but where the last login, where the last active participation is some time ago. Try to directly connect to them, either in face-to-face meetings, or what also works very well, if you can convince them to participate here, is to run a campaign on the platform itself. So try to reach out directly to them, try to involve them into an activity on the platform again, and try to run a campaign to identify the functional gaps. So this is a campaign where you want to simply look into the issues that you are facing here on a functional level, and it's about getting insights basically. So this works really well. We have seen this in a couple of organizations in our portfolio. If it comes to the login procedure, we would recommend use single sign-on wherever possible. So this is a strong recommendation from our side. Single sign-on lowers the hurdle dramatically to log in. If I just have to click on a bookmark or maybe just type in a URL and I'm logging automatically, this will simply motivate me to log in the future. Try to use, if possible, a short URL, so something like in the examples that you can see here. So if it's possible that you have even URL shorteners, this could be a great way to memorize the URL. If you have a brand for your innovation program, this would be, of course, the perfect place to also use the brand name here in the URL. We would, if technically possible, also recommend to position bookmarks on the desktops. So if for those users who have their own computer, their own PC, if you could just automatically push basically a bookmark on the desktop, this is something that also motivates people to simply click on that bookmark. In combination with single sign-on, this would be a very intuitive way to log in. And QR codes have proven to work really well. So especially for individual campaigns. So if you want to make sure that people can access, for example, a campaign easily through mobile, a QR code works very well, and we recommend to put it on your marketing material, on your banners, on your posters, on your flyers, or even within emails that advertise this campaign or an individual campaign. This also works, of course, for activities around the platform itself, but we have seen that organizations use it primarily for giving easy access to individual campaigns. If it comes to the user interface, we would recommend, if you want to launch an innovation platform in the future, of course, if you use a standardized platform from a specialist, this guarantees that the vendor itself has tested the platform in terms of user interface and user experience. Nonetheless, in any case, if you use a built-in application or from a vendor, we recommend to invite a sample group of users. And those users should be a mixed group in the best case, from different sections of the organization, from different sections of the target audience, maybe just 5 to 10 people, test the platform and capture the feedback and try then to design the user interface appropriately. If you already have an innovation program running, then it's about simply optimizing the user interface. Here again, we would recommend to directly approach users that are not feeling comfortable with the platform, that actually maybe even are complaining actively. Address those people directly. So talk to them, identify what annoys them, what would they really like to see in the platform. Are things very complicated to handle? Okay, how can we optimize this? How can we lower basically the hurdles here? Again, here you can run a campaign with those people. So you can run a campaign on identifying those gaps on the user interface or user experience level. If it comes to mobile or terminal access, we basically recommend to all of our clients to enable mobile access. So even for those people who maybe primarily use or access the platform through a computer at work, we have seen that those people might use access through mobile when they are traveling, when they have workshops outside, when they are visiting vendors, when they are at a summit or a fair, when they are just at home. Maybe they just want to check up on their latest ideas. Maybe they just want to comment on one of the comments that they have received. They want to reply to something. Mobile access is nowadays basically something that is also expected from the end user. So we strongly recommend, if it is possible, enable mobile access. And we also recommend, if you have target audiences that are not having their own computers, use terminals whenever possible. So in those facilities, in those factories, in those locations, put terminal access there, allow terminal access there, either through accounts that those people have on their own. Sometimes you generate accounts that are used by multiple people. This is also an option. option. But we would strongly recommend mobile and terminal use in all scenarios, basically. Good, so this was the technology component. So let's look a little bit about strategic challenges on a strategic level. On the one side, what we have seen occasionally is that innovation programs are not properly aligned to corporate strategies. So there's either a misalignment or no alignment at all. This is a challenge that we have seen occasionally. Something that is actually a little bit more common is missing sponsorship, so that you run campaigns without having the right sponsor. You might remember the Swisslog case, or having simply no sponsor at all. And another aspect that we have seen sometimes is that sometimes you might get resistance from middle managers. So the middle management basically is not involved actively or doesn't want to get involved, and this represents actually a threat to innovation programs. So let's look at the details here. So if you talk about proper alignment, on the one side, what can happen is that due to no alignment at all, you might become too ambitious. We have seen organizations who try to do too many things too early, and in the end leads to basically failed initiatives. On the other side, what could happen due to that fact is that your management simply stops the innovation activities. So you get feedback that there's no connection to what the management is actually looking for, and therefore they're either threatening or either directly stopping the innovation program. What can also happen, as I mentioned, there's simply no connection to the targets of the corporate strategy. And in some occasions we have seen that there might be a connection, but the targets are not defined well enough. So you have some strategic targets for the innovation program, but they are too vague. They are not as precise as they need to be. If you talk about middle managers, what could happen is that they give you feedback and they say, well, we're not involved from the beginning, so we don't want to be involved right now. So you have left us out at the beginning, so why should we not participate afterwards? What you also might get as feedback is that middle managers might say, well, I look at targets here, I don't want to do some crazy stuff, I don't want to really get involved in something new here, I have my targets and I want to achieve them. And what you also might get as feedback is that they really are unsure what is the purpose of this if they look at themselves. So, well, what kind of benefit do I as a manager here, as a department head or as a section head, what do I get out of that? So it's unclear to them what kind of benefit they can achieve individually. If we talk about missing sponsorship, commonly if sponsorship is a problem, then we have seen that there's no program sponsor in place, so innovation programs are run without any senior sponsorship. Another aspect is that campaign sponsors, if you can convince sponsors to stand behind a campaign, to own a campaign, they might not be able to really act within the campaign, meaning that they cannot provide any budgets for implementing ideas or the necessary resources to actually evaluate ideas. So let's look at all those aspects individually. So if we see the situation, or if you are facing the situation that you are maybe doing too many things and all of them are not working, it might be that you're too ambitious. On the one side, what this could mean is that you have a so-called unbalanced mixture in your campaign portfolio, meaning typically you categorize campaigns into two types. On the one side, you have so-called tactical campaigns that are looking for really short-term successes. It's about something that is maybe locally relevant in a department or in a section or maybe just in one company in a holding. And those campaigns of tactical nature, they look really for quick successes. It's not about large budgets, it's not about long-term implementation plans, it's not about spending years and years to implement an idea, it's really about something doing relatively quickly. Now, on the other side, you have so-called strategic campaigns. These are campaigns that look for long-term success. Here it's about maybe, for example, an extension of your business model or changing your business model. It's about new markets, it's about new product segments. Should we enter new product segments or should we enter market X? These are typical topics for strategic campaigns. These often are relevant for the whole organization, so it's not just of local relevance in one section. It's really, in the vast majority of cases, influencing everybody. And here we talk about larger innovation projects. It's about bigger budgets, it's about larger implementation times, it's about more resources getting involved into the implementation. Our recommendation would be here to try to match really the expectations of your organization. So think about what is your management expecting, especially your top management. Are they looking for short-term results or are they looking for long-term results? Focus then the portfolio or structure your campaign portfolio then on one of those two aspects. In some scenarios, it might make even sense to focus completely on tactical campaigns, and that would be the scenario if you have limited experience. So if you are starting a new innovation program, if you have maybe done something in the past but you did it very, very locally and now you want to start a corporate-wide innovation program, in those scenarios our recommendation would be start with something tactical, something that can generate quick successes, and then over the course of time, in harmony with your culture, you can expand basically the impact of the innovation program by step-by-step also launching strategic campaigns. If we talk about the threat of stopping or getting cancelled, what is often the underlying or the fundamental problem here is that your innovation program didn't deliver measurable results, and especially measurable financial results, quickly enough. So here is again a mismatch in expectations. So your top management expected certain results, especially financial results, but you couldn't deliver them in time. What we would recommend in those scenarios is to run tactical campaigns focusing on financial outcomes. The classical example is to think about cost-saving activities. How can we save X euros in Y weeks? So these are typically campaigns where you really look for short-term results. So we're talking about something like implementability in 4, 8, or maximum 12 weeks. And because we talk about cost saving, these are typically ideas that can be implemented relatively quickly. So that would be our recommendation. If you get that kind of feedback from your top management, or if you get those kind of indicators that there's a threat that the innovation program might be cancelled, try to identify if the reason is that your top management is unsatisfied in terms of financial values. This is, in the vast majority of cases, we have seen that this is actually the underlying issue, and then we recommend the use of tactical campaigns here, focusing on financial outcomes. If we talk about no alignment at all to a corporate strategy, we would recommend to ask the program sponsor of the initiative to define those targets. So this is the person that is a senior manager or maybe even the CEO, him or herself. And this is typically the person that has the capability and the knowledge and the responsibility to define actually tangible targets here. We would recommend to agree on KPIs where you all, on the one side, look on the inputs. So maybe you want to achieve a certain amount of ideas in certain periods of time. Maybe you want to get a certain amount of comments. So look at the input side, but also look at the output side. So look on especially financial results here, but they don't have to be only financial, but typically your top management will be primarily focused on financial results. If it comes to targets that are not defined well enough, so you might have some strategic targets in your innovation program, but they are too vague maybe. Again, the program sponsor plays a role here. Here in those scenarios, if you have targets in place, but you feel that they need to be defined more clearly, ask for specifically financial KPIs here. So this again is related to the program sponsor. This person can give you that kind of feedback. If it comes to campaigns, we recommend that the sponsor of a campaign always, all the time, defines the targets for a campaign. This is a strong recommendation from our side. The campaign sponsor has a similar role as a program sponsor. The campaign sponsor has the right knowledge, the right experience, the right background to define those targets. And if possible, also for campaigns, try to pinpoint financial targets. There might be scenarios where this might become difficult, where you run campaigns where it's difficult to define financial targets, but our experience tells us that in the vast majority of cases, this is possible. If we talk about middle management, if you get the feedback that they don't feel really involved from early on, we recommend to ask for operational topics here. So ask those middle managers that actually give you this kind of feedback. Try to identify their operational challenges and focus on those that have a profile of being open-minded generally. So those will be open to you to run a campaign, maybe just as a test balloon, just to see if this works. don't try to focus in that scenario on those that are really, really conservative. Try to look for those that are, generally speaking, open-minded to new things, to new developments, to changes here. If you get the feedback that your middle management says, well, this is too much, I'm focusing on my targets and I don't want to cope with new developments and new topics, what we recommend here is really about the quick success stories here. You need to build quick success stories to try to convince them. And here it would be interesting to focus on those managers that have urgent needs. So try to, in dialogue with the middle management here, try to identify those managers that really need to solve a specific problem within a short period of time, that have really urgent needs, and try to run campaigns with them on the platform to try to support them in fulfilling those urgent needs. If you have the scenario that the middle management tells you, well, I don't understand what this is all about, I might be interested, but please explain to me how does this help me? We recommend in this scenario to run a campaign with the middle management on actually identifying their top priorities. So this could be one way to really motivate the middle management here to actually visit the platform. So it's all about them. It's a campaign that is limited to the middle management itself. So there's no regular employee invited. There's nobody from senior management invited. Maybe one or two senior managers might be involved into the evaluation process, but they cannot actively engage into the campaign, meaning they cannot submit ideas or comments here. So this is a campaign for middle management on identifying their top priorities. And then after you have selected the most important ones, you can then run follow-up campaigns that are based actually on those topics. If you talk about missing sponsorship, if you don't have a program sponsor in place, our recommendation is to try to define the strategic goals of the innovation program by simply taking the key strategic goals of your corporation and define them as the exact innovation goals. So this has proven to work very well, and is actually more or less the best case scenario to simply define the innovation goals as strategic company goals. What is important here is to understand that program sponsors, they don't really get involved in any kind of way in innovation activities. So they don't visit the platform typically, they are not part of any initiatives. But what happens here is that program sponsors, they add tremendous credibility to the process. If I, as a regular user, if I see that my CEO or the director of my company in a holding, if my top manager basically is sponsoring the innovation program, that motivates me, that encourages me to participate, because it shows me that there's top sponsorship behind the platform, and there's somebody who takes responsibility over all activities here. If it comes about budgets and evaluation resources, what we have seen is that companies who face those scenarios where campaign sponsors basically, they act in a campaign, they sponsor a campaign, but afterwards they cannot act on those. That typically happens if those managers want to be innovative or ask for innovation outside of their domain, basically. They don't have really the capacity, the capability of taking action on those in those campaigns. So this is typically outside of the domain of a manager. We would strongly recommend that campaign sponsors should always have an intrinsic interest to identify the value that is requested here. So it should be, there should be a direct connection between the value that should be the outcome of the campaign and the domain of a sponsor. So a sponsor should be intrinsically motivated to follow up on the campaign and to make sure that budgets and resources are available. Our strong recommendation would be to actually try to run only campaigns if you have a clear situation in terms of budget and evaluation resources. This is sometimes difficult to achieve, sometimes maybe not achievable at all. But again, in the vast majority of cases, this is what we have seen in the vast majority of cases, this can actually be achieved. We have seen this among all of our clients, that in a very high number of cases, campaigns actually can be run if budgets and evaluation resources are defined and not otherwise. So these would be our strong recommendations if we talk about strategy. So we have seen here a couple of challenges. We have talked about how to tackle them. Let's talk about communication. So what kind of challenges do we have in communication? What are the most common ones that we have seen at Hype? On the one side, we talk about incomplete messaging. Here we talk about not really asking for the appropriate aspects, basically. So your messaging is not really complete. Then we have the problem that based on missing or wrong communication, your audiences do not believe in the program. It's not just about individual initiatives. They don't believe that the innovation program really works. So communication plays an important role here. And then it's about utilizing the wrong communication tactics. So you might have thought about this, but you use the wrong tactics, and this can have a tremendous impact on your success. So if you talk about incomplete messaging, one problem is that sometimes organizations, they don't specify or they don't mention why audiences should participate. So why should I as an employee really participate? What is in it for me? What is the benefit for me here? So this can play a role. Another aspect could be that you don't request the behaviors that you want to see. So this is something that we have seen works as a very good tool to actually request the behaviors that you are looking for. And we get to this into details in a moment. If it comes to the belief in the program, we have talked about this a couple of times. It's about not basically sharing success stories. And on the other side, it's sometimes blockers that you might have in your audience. People that are very resistant, that have a negative bias, that actually don't want to participate even though they had never personal experiences with the innovation program. They simply don't trust all kinds of corporate initiatives. They are negative in terms of their mindset. Those blockers can have an impact, especially in local communities. And there are tools and ways how you can tackle that. If it comes to wrong communication tactics, on the one side, what can be critical is to not understand fully audience behavior, the behavioral patterns of audiences. So how do they behave? How should they behave? The other aspect is that you might not reach everybody simply by using wrong communication tactics. And the third aspect is that you might not have a communication plan at all. So we have seen this, and this can be challenging. We will discuss this in a moment. So if we talk about incomplete messaging and not mentioning why audiences should really participate, we would recommend here that you should explain the business context for the whole innovation program whenever you market the innovation program, but specifically inside of campaigns. Our recommendation would actually be to never run a campaign where you don't give information on the business context. Why is this important for us? Why is this a problem for us? Why is this opportunity so interesting for us? What is the business context? You should always include that in the description of the campaign. In the best case, you should also mention what kind of potential impact a successful initiative has. So if you run a campaign and the campaign is looking for a specific value, what happens afterwards? What happens if we achieve this value? So this could be that you say, well, if we've identified the right ideas, this allows us to do this and that. We can do X or Y. It could be, this is an example that we've seen a couple of times, sometimes one outcome could be that you break down silos, which could be a huge benefit for employees working in those silos. So this would be a recommendation, mention the potential impact of successful initiatives. If it's about requesting behaviors, well, what we have seen, and which is a fundamental part of identifying successful ideas, is that commenting and collaboration on ideas can add value. And here we talk about multiple dimensions. On the one side, it's about enriching ideas. So if I submit an idea and my colleague maybe has something to add, he just comments on it and it makes my idea better. It's about identifying weak areas. So I might have submitted an idea and somebody looks at my idea and says, well, this and this and this is a problem. Somebody else can join in and find and mention solution to those weak areas that were mentioned earlier. So somebody mentions the weak points, somebody else fixes those points. Out of those discussions, my idea gets better. Sometimes it's a practitioner. Somebody says, well, in theory, all is nice, but in practice, this will not work. And maybe a colleague of his or hers will actually jump in and says, yeah, you're right, this and this and this and this is a challenge in the reality, but I have solutions for that. So out of those discussions, the quality of an idea gets better. So Another aspect is that ideas that have received a lot of comments and a lot of high quality discussions typically are implemented quicker because you have already rounded up the idea. So there are no weaknesses or just maybe just a few left. All the problematic areas have been addressed. So this allows you to implement those ideas probably quicker. Our recommendation is make a strong and specific request for participation here, specifically that people should look at the ideas of others. So it's not just about commenting on your own ideas, it's not just about submitting ideas, it's about also looking at the content of others. Look at what others have submitted, look at other comments on other ideas, request this, put this into your communication material, in your marketing material. This has an impact on the end users. They will understand that this is actually something that the management is looking for, either in one specific campaign or on a program level. Also an interesting aspect is here that you might have, and we have seen this very often, you might have a section of your audience that will not submit ideas over the course of the time. But they might be interested in discussing already existing content. They might be interested in giving their own point of view on certain ideas. So that's why it's also important to really address active collaboration, to mention this in your communication marketing tools. As an example, which is a very specific one, but an example that is used more and more often nowadays, you might run a campaign where you don't ask for ideas actually, where you have a challenge, you already have identified the challenge solutions, maybe in a campaign before that or maybe through other options, but you don't know which of those solutions is the right one. So it's a very difficult situation for you, it's a very difficult selection process. So you might run a campaign that is actually pre-filled with ideas, and then it's about really asking the audience not to submit new ideas, just to comment and to vote, and to make the selection process more efficient in the end. So here you would actively write in the campaign description, please do not submit new ideas, please help us to select the appropriate ideas by commenting and voting and giving us your point of view. So this is just one example why it is so critical and so important to really address and mention the behaviors that you're looking for. If we talk about the belief in the program, so not sharing success stories, the problem here is that you might be working in a company which is very innovative, but you never hear about that. So there might be other departments, other sections of the organization which do great work, great innovation is achieved there, but I, as a user in another department, I never hear of that. So if I don't hear about successes, and here we talk about really continuous information, then I will lose confidence at some point. And this goes back also to the Swisslog example. If at some point I never hear about something getting implemented, that some value has been created, I think, well, maybe the innovation program has lost sponsorship, has lost budgeting, has lost focus. For some reason, I will lose the confidence that this is a good activity that I should join in. So our recommendation would be define a communication process if it comes to sharing successes. So this should be part of your campaign planning process. How do we share the success of this specific campaign? How do we do this? So which channel should we use? At which point in time should we communicate the successes here? And it's also important that you give this feedback to everybody that you have invited. So not only the people that have participated, not only the people that have submitted an idea or submitted a comment or a vote, even the ones that have never opened the campaign in the platform, if they have been invited, they should get the feedback that the campaign has worked, that there have been successes achieved, that you have achieved the value that you were looking for, or even if it's just part of the value, any kind of success should reach really everybody in the target audience that you have invited. If it's about blockers, so how can you tackle blockers? One very effective tool is to create a community of so-called innovation advocates. These are typically people that have a certain profile. They are typically influencers, meaning they are well connected. They have a strong network. They have a lot of connection points in their network. And they don't only participate very frequently, but they also submit high quality content. So it's not just about submitting ideas or submitting comments or votes per se. It's really about submitting the right kind of content. This makes sure that they understand that how the process works, they understand what the targets are on a program level, on a campaign level. This makes sure that they are the right candidates for this kind of community. These people are typically volunteers, so they don't get any kind of extra benefit out of that, no financial benefits or something like that. Some organizations, what they do is they create a community, a real community, where you can become an official member. This community is marketed in a special way. You get T-shirts and badges, I mean. So this can have an impact on the reputation of those people, but there's no additional benefits there. Those people actually represent the innovation team on a local level, so they are your eyes and ears. They give feedback to the community, so if changes are taking place or if there's something happening, they share this kind of information, but they also capture information and capture feedback from the community. So this is important for the innovation team, for you guys, to get this kind of feedback from the local level. This is one channel to actually capture that feedback from local levels. They can share the success stories, so this is again a channel you can use to share those successes. They should be, in the best case, met frequently. So you should train them continuously, you should meet them. What we have seen works very well is a monthly schedule. These would be workshops where you try to meet those people physically, and you inform them about recent activities, you inform them about upcoming activities. So you share all the information that is relevant for the innovation program with them. What helps here is that they have an impact on the local communities, and therefore they have an impact also on those blockers by talking to those people, sharing the information, capturing the information. We have seen that this works really well. If we talk about missing understanding of audience behaviors, we recommend to try to structure your audience into different groups. We call this the 5 stacks methodology. So try to think about how many people are really enthusiastic about your program. Meaning they participate frequently in any kind of initiative. How many are interested? They participate maybe in some initiatives just occasionally. How many are cautious? How many look into the platform? They click around, but they never participate. How many are unaware? They simply don't know that something exists. And how many blockers do you have? Try to identify each size, meaning that if you have, for example, a program where you start the program as a new initiative, you have never addressed innovation management systematically in the past, this is the first platform that you want to use. Typically those organizations have the vast amount of users in the unaware group, so this will be by far the largest group. You have to design your communication tactics accordingly, meaning you have to make sure that you market the innovation program as good and as early as possible, because you want to lower actually the unaware group in terms of their size. The ideal case would be basically reversed pyramid, where you have the vast amount of people in the enthusiastic group, and so on and so on and so on. This is basically hard to achieve. So we have never seen a company that has that kind of profile or shape. Very mature, very successful organizations, they have a lot of people in the interested groups, I mean. So the vast amount of people are interested, some are really enthusiastic, some are still cautious, and they have a low amount of unawares and blockers. If you can achieve that kind of profile, this would be fantastic. So design your communication tactics accordingly. If we're talking about, well, not reaching everybody, try to analyze which channels are available to you. So what kind of channels do exist, and which ones have worked in the past. So which channels were successful maybe in past innovation activities or maybe in other activities that were executed. Sometimes we see that organizations don't have a communication plan in place at all. Here we would recommend create a communication plan for the innovation program even prior to launching the platform and the program. So if you have not launched it yet, this would be a strong recommendation from our side. If you already have launched your innovation program, try to create nonetheless a more strategic communication plan on a platform, on a program level. Nonetheless, you should always think also about a communication plan for individual campaigns. So here it is important to think about the audiences, because what we have seen is the more successful you become, the more mature you become, the more often you might want to run campaigns that address unique audiences. So it's not just about anybody, it's not about a corporate-wide campaign, it's about local campaigns then. And those audiences, they can be reached in a different way. So if you have people in HR or people in R&D, a campaign in R&D probably needs to utilize different communication channels, or you need to create a different communication plan for an R&D campaign than for an HR campaign. So that would be our recommendation: create a communication plan for the innovation program, in the best case prior to launching it, and think about it whenever you launch a campaign. Very good. So we get to the last topic of executing now campaigns. So what kind of challenges are organizations facing here? On the one side, it's simply an incorrect execution of campaigns. We will look at this in a moment, what this means. It's about lack of resources, especially in the innovation team. It's about not having a campaign plan in place. And it's about process bottlenecks. So if we think about incorrect execution, what does that mean? On the one side, it means the campaign description is often, we have seen this, that this sometimes really happens. Campaign descriptions are missing information or not detailed enough. We have mentioned that. There's no moderation in campaigns. Moderation can have a tremendous impact on the success of a campaign. In some scenarios, if you don't have moderation, this has a negative impact. Campaigns go in the wrong direction, the community goes and collaborates in the wrong way. And it could be that you simply don't react to specific developments while a campaign is running. I've seen this in this example where we looked at this dark red curve. The campaign, there were certain developments in this campaign and there was no reaction to that. So this is a problem. If we talk about lack of resources, it's sometimes about not having the right structure in place if we talk about the innovation team. And it's about innovation teams being understaffed. This is unfortunately happening sometimes. It's a reality in some organizations. If we talk about the campaign plan, if there's no campaign plan in place, on the one side it's about respecting so-called local conditions. So you have to think about where is your audience located and what kind of conditions are present there. It's about maybe running too many campaigns due to the fact that you don't have structured this in a campaign plan. And it might be that if you think about process bottlenecks, you have evaluators that are not experts in the campaign topic, meaning that they have been selected but they don't know really what the campaign is all about. Other process bottlenecks could be that the evaluators are not trained, so they don't know what is the campaign all about, how does it really work, what kind of criteria should we use, and what maybe is even the process for evaluating ideas on this campaign. The most common phenomenon that we see is that organizations use the wrong evaluation tools at the wrong time. This can become critical and can lead to the fact that you have either difficulties or cannot identify the right ideas in a campaign, or that evaluators simply, they cannot take the time, so they are not available and they simply cannot conduct evaluations. Now let's look at the incorrect campaign execution. If you have a campaign, if you are creating a campaign description, our recommendation is create the description always in a joint environment together with the campaign sponsor. The campaign sponsor typically knows exactly what has to come into a description. Put the information about the business context, we talked about this. Mention always the criteria that ideas have to meet. Mention the behaviors that you are looking for, we talked about this, but also mention the timeline and the next steps. Our recommendation is, and this is a strong recommendation also, these areas should always be covered for every campaign that you run. If it's an open campaign without a time limit, or if it's a targeted campaign with a time limit. Test your campaign description. So select a couple of people from the target audience before the campaign is launched. Present them the campaign description, get their feedback. What have you understood after reading this description? What kind of ideas are we looking for? And then try to make sure that you phrase the description properly in a way that the sample audience understands that. If we talk about moderation, one aspect that is important here, generally speaking, is that the shorter the running time of a campaign, the more important moderation will become. So if you are running campaigns, and we have a couple of clients who do that, for a couple of days, then moderation becomes really critical. And the reason is that moderators can really steer discussions in directions that you want the discussion to go to, or the discussions. So they can really steer the community to submit the right kind of content. If possible, our recommendation would also be to involve the sponsor. This could be, for example, that during the running time of the campaign, the sponsor has half an hour or an hour to maybe give comments or reply to existing comments. This has a huge impact because the audience will understand that the sponsor is really actively engaged. It's not just about having the picture and the name in the platform. The sponsor is really conducting some exercises. The sponsor is looking at content, is really giving feedback, active feedback. So this has a tremendous impact on communities here. If we talk about the critical developments, so what we recommend is to continuously monitor the quality of ideas and also the quality of the comments. And continuously means, to give you an example, if you run a campaign for 2 weeks, you would recommend to look at those indicators every 2 days. Every 2 days you should look at new ideas that have been submitted and new comments and the quality of them. If necessary, try to rephrase the campaign description. If you see everything goes in the wrong direction, typically the campaign description is the main source of that kind of problem. Try to rephrase it even while the campaign is running, edit the campaign, add the new description, and then afterwards issue a reminder. So this should come from the sponsor, like all reminders should come from the sponsor, and issue a specific reminder after you have rephrased the description. Highlight in the reminder what you have changed or the details that have been added to the campaign description. If you look at the resource side, what we see is that in some scenarios, depending on organizational structures, the teams, the innovation teams are not structured appropriately. What we would recommend, and this is a more general recommendation, we would need to discuss this with you in detail, but generally speaking, if you have a relatively low maturity, if you are not very experienced, it typically works very well if you have a centralized innovation team, meaning one team that basically overlooks all the activities. The more mature you become, the more experienced you become, a decentralized structure probably makes more sense, where you have a central team that focuses on those corporate-wide activities, on corporate-wide campaigns, often with those strategic natures. Then you have, on top of that, you have those local innovation teams. They focus a lot on local activities. They take the responsibility, for example, to manage local campaigns. And those campaigns, as discussed, they often have a tactical or operative nature. Sometimes we see that innovation teams are understaffed, and this unfortunately is a problem for innovation programs. What we have seen is that in the vast majority of cases, you need a full-time innovation manager. We have seen organizations who try to implement innovation manager that works in part-time, or just add this to an existing job profile. This typically has a lot of challenges that come with it. The profile of an innovation manager is relatively complex. A lot of activities have to be covered. So we have seen that having a full-time innovation manager is really a huge benefit. On top of that, at some point, it might be necessary, as discussed just a moment ago, that you have local innovation managers, a local structure there. And at some point, this might even become a requirement. So we have seen this in organizations if the maturity level rises, maybe even relatively quickly, if you don't establish those local structures, this might have a negative impact, that you lose a lot of employees on a local level, that you lose the middle management because you don't support them in the appropriate way. If we talk about campaign plans, so I mentioned this, local conditions, think about the diversity basically of everybody you want to address. So this comes down to the location, this comes down to maybe the different time zones or even different languages. But the most important aspect is the cultural background that the audience has. What we have seen is that some organizations address this specifically by, for example, taking a campaign and running it multiple times on a local level. This might be necessary, for example, if you have parts of your workforce in Asia. In Asia, due to the cultural structure there and the cultural background of your workforce there, in Asia it is very common to follow hierarchies and to be aligned to hierarchies. So you might require a local sponsor for those kinds of campaigns. So you might have a head office or headquarter in Europe or anywhere else. But if you want to run a campaign with an Asian audience, it might make sense to separate the audience there, run this campaign individually with this audience, but try to win over a local sponsor and even describe the campaign in the local language. In the scenario that you might run simply too many campaigns, if you see that too many things are falling, this goes also partially back to our discussion earlier where we said you're too ambitious. Here it's again also about quick successes first. So before you try to launch multiple campaigns in parallel, try to make individual campaigns a success. So try to build up those quick success stories, try to maybe focus on more tactical campaigns as mentioned earlier, and after you've done this, after you have seen that your community maybe matures, you should try to then be more adventurous and try to maybe run the first campaigns, maybe overlapping each other or maybe even in parallel then. But our recommendation is, and there are rare exceptions for that, our recommendation is to start with individual campaigns as good as possible, and then over the course of time, with the development of your community and your innovation maturity, you should then try to run multiple campaigns in parallel. If we talk about evaluators, so evaluators are not being experts in the campaign topic, this happens typically if you as the innovation team or somebody else selects the evaluators, but not the sponsor of the campaign. So we have seen this actually in a couple of examples with some of our clients, where the campaign sponsor actually would select totally different evaluators than the selections coming from the innovation team. So this is a critical aspect. This is a strong recommendation also from our side. Involve the sponsor in the selection of the evaluators. The sponsor typically knows who are the experts for this specific topic. Who are the people that have the right experience, the right know-how, the right background to make the right decisions here. If we talk about the evaluators not being available, so this can be a threat to campaigns especially. Here again, the campaign sponsor plays an important role. So the campaign sponsor, in the best case, ensures that the resources are available. So it is difficult typically if the sponsor is not involved or if the sponsor acts outside of his or her domain to get the resources basically blocked. So that's why this is a strong recommendation. We have seen this in the vast majority of cases to work very well to make sure that the campaign sponsor, before you launch a campaign, identifies those resources and really blocks them appropriately. Now, using the wrong tools at the wrong time is one of the main threats to campaigns. What we would recommend here is how do you make the right selection? First of all, what we would recommend is estimate the data that you are looking for. So estimate what kind of feedback do we get, take into account the audience size, the maturity of the audience, the experience of the audience. Is this your first campaign or have you run 10 campaigns before that already? So try to make an estimation and you have to plan somehow accordingly to that kind of estimation. Put in, of course, some buffers. We would recommend you to be more generous in terms of buffers. But the estimation is the source of in the end the planning process. Generally speaking, what we have seen is that the more ideas you estimate to receive, the more depth you basically require then in your evaluation process. And if we talk about depth here, you have to differentiate between multiple aspects. The first one is the type. So how do you want to evaluate? Do you want to compare ideas against each other, or do you want to make a selection idea by idea? Then the second one is basically the level of detail. So is it more about just having a gut feeling? Is it more about just having a high-level impression of an idea, or just having a certain opinion about an idea, high-level opinion? Or is it about really trying to capture exact data as good as possible? Then it's about the process itself. Do you want to get one feedback from the evaluation team? Or should every evaluator really evaluate the ideas individually? It's about the structure of the process, meaning do you think that one evaluation round is sufficient? This might be the case if you estimate not a lot of ideas in this campaign. Or do you think you need multiple rounds here? Then it's you kind of multiple structures implemented. One way would be, of course, the funnel structure where you have multiple rounds. You take, for example, all ideas in the first round, and then take the winners over to the second round, and so on and so on. And last but not least, the limitations. So what kind of evaluation resources are available? How many evaluators do you have? There's a difference between 2 evaluators and 10. What kind of time have they blocked? So do they have one full day to conduct the evaluation, or is it just 1 hour? And what is the timeline? So what kind of deadline does the sponsor define here for evaluating ideas? And if it's about training the evaluators, what we have seen is that what works very well is to involve evaluators really early on into the process. So not while the campaign is running, not immediately before you want to start the evaluation process. Involve them basically when you start to plan the campaign. This is typically 3 to 4 weeks before you launch the campaign. If you involve them early on, it makes sure that they get feedback from the sponsor, they get feedback from your side, they are fully aware of the details of the campaign, the description of the campaign, the value that the sponsor is looking for. So try to achieve this really for all the campaigns. This is again a strong recommendation from our side. Good. So we have talked about those 4 areas: strategy, technology, communication, and execution. So let's basically summarize everything. So talking about those areas here, these are the 4 areas where we see the most common challenges being that innovation programs are basically facing. On the technology side, we've talked about some aspects here about access barriers, about having no mobile or terminal access. On the strategy level, we have talked about the alignment to the business strategy. We've talked about missing sponsorship, the middle management acting as blockers. We have talked about communication, incomplete messaging, not having a belief in the program, and maybe using wrong communication tactics. And we just have talked about the execution part, either executing campaigns maybe incorrectly, having a lack of resources in the innovation team, maybe not having a real campaign plan in place, and we've talked about process bottlenecks. We have talked about all those details, about those aspects that are important. We've talked about tactics, tools, and targets on how to overcome them. Now what is interesting here is you might feel that there are 2 topics not really addressed directly here. And on the one side, that is the question, well, idea quality itself, isn't that a challenge? And low participation itself, I mean, we have mentioned participation sometimes, but isn't that a challenge, or maybe one of the main challenges at all? And the answer to that is, well, high quality and high participation rates are often a consequence of what we have discussed. So if you make sure that you address those challenges that we have just mentioned earlier on, if you implement those tools and tactics that we have discussed, then the quality of ideas will automatically raise, and the participation rates will also raises. These are basically consequences of underlying problems. So we sometimes get the feedback that some of our clients approach us and mention that they have a problem in terms of quality. In the end, what we've always seen is that at least one of those underlying challenges is actually the root cause of the problem here. Great. So we have taken a little bit more time than estimated, but what we would be interested also to know is, what is your story? So what kind of experiences have you made? What kind of challenges have you faced in the past, or maybe are facing right now? We would be very happy if you could just maybe connect to us or share this information with us. We would be really interested to discuss those topics with you. You can contact us on our website, hypeinnovation.com, but you can also contact us through multiple social media platforms. My colleague Michel will now also have a questionnaire after this webinar. So this leaves me with thanking you for your participation and hoping to see you in the next webinar.